Hello, I'm Phil Rogers of Rogers Foundation of Music and Our Digital Recording, and today we're going to present one of my students so you can kind of get an idea of what we actually do here. His name is Jared Valiant. I'm actually going to turn it over to him at this point. Jared.
Okay, let's begin. Should we begin with the cycle of fourths then?
Actually, let's talk about what this means to you, what got you into this, what your direction is.
Okay, well, let's see. That's a big question. I first started developing a passion for music at 12 years old. I really just started out as something for fun that me and my friends did. We had a little band, and it was really just what the cool kids did. And then I went on this big vacation trip to South Carolina with my family, and all I listened to was my brother's music, and he had tons of film scores in there. And I just was, throughout that whole trip, I went 4 days of driving of listening to nothing but film scores. And by the time I got back, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to score films. That's so much better than playing this rock music with my band. You know, it's so much more complex. There's so much more emotional. I like that emotion to it. And I became obsessed with that. And about 2 years later, after just trying to teach myself and really struggling with that, for my 14th birthday, and that was almost 7 years ago, my mother takes me to this studio here. And she introduces me to Phil Rogers, and I was so excited. I got to be in a real recording studio, and I was meeting this the owner of the studio, an actual audio engineer, and it was a pretty exciting day for me. And he asked me some questions. I had no idea what I was answering with, and I played some music, and then at the end he says, "I'd like to teach you." And my mom says, "Yeah, we already talked about it. We can do lessons." And I was like, "Whoa!" Never saw myself actually taking lessons before. You know, I always thought everything that you could learn about music you could learn on your own. And but after I met this man and saw, you know, what his capability was, and saw his passion with God, which at the time I was going through a bit of a hard phase, as most teenagers do, I was just drawn to it. I knew I needed to be here. And tell you what, once you start getting that education, you start realizing how necessary it was. And that's when I started becoming passionate about education as well, because without it, I wouldn't be able to do the things I do today. Now, I am a devoted Christian. I love Jesus Christ, and I believe He is the reason I am here at this studio with this man. And I believe that there is a legacy for music education and composition and the application of our language that I am meant to carry on throughout my life. And I see it as my duty and calling, and I will pursue it until I leave this place.
What about, okay, I'm going to ask some questions. Okay, you know, we start a musical language, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the musical language literally means a language. We're taught note reading and things like this from the beginning, and I'm not saying this is wrong, what I'm going to go through right now. Mm-hmm. We go into a lesson, we sit down, we have a book thrown in front of us with dots on the lines. As one of my older students says, you mean we just chase dots? I said, no, we don't chase dots. We learn the music. We're literally, I think I can safely say this, we're literally taught how to not improv, but how to become dependent on the music. So when we first start in this musical journey, we take a piece of music, a very simple one. We learn the notes on the page. We learn how to read them. We learn to put them on the piano. We have no idea how they're constructed. We have no idea why they're there. We have no idea of key signatures. We're not taught anything about form. Mm-hmm. So what we do here is we actually take this a different way, a different course. For instance, when a person comes in, the first thing we do is we begin to study Law 1 of the 5 Laws of Music, mm-hmm. which Jared knows is...
The 5 laws of music is the order of major key signatures through the cycle of fifths.
And that would be?
That would be
go
down and eat bullfrogs is the phrase that we memorize for that. And it's actually a wonderful phrase. You hear it the first time and it never leaves your head. I heard that the day I met Phil, and it has been there ever since. Now, with that order in mind, you also need to know the order of sharps. We have another phrase that goes down with that, and that is 4 cows go down and eat. So between these two phrases, you now know the order of major key signatures, and you now know the order of sharps. Now, with all this information, you can begin to understand what the word diatonic really means, and that is, without doubt, the most important word in music.
And what does diatonic mean?
Diatonic means that all notes and chords honor your key signature.
Good. Now, what Jared just stated to you was that the key of G has 1 sharp, D has 2, go down, go 1, down 2, and 3, eat 4, bow 5, frog sharp 6. So we know the key of G, D, A, E, and B, and F sharp. We also realize there's 7 letters in the musical alphabet, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and that's basically where all the scales are built. Okay, if I go in the key of G, the key of G has 1 sharp, it is F sharp. The musical alphabet says it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, we just stated the 7 scales. We simply go to the key of G, and we go G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Whatever a scale starts on, it must end on, but we also realize in the key of G we have 1 sharp, which is F. That's where we do the statement, go 1, 4. The statement, the names of the sharps are 4 cows go down and eat, F, C, G, D, A, and E. So the key of G has 1 sharp, it is F. So it's go 1, 4, down 2, 4 cows, and 3, 4 cows go. In other words, G1, F, D2, F, C, A3, F, C, G. Therefore, the G scale, we know the key of G has 1 sharp, which is F, so it's G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So diatonically, you must sharp the F in the G major scale in order for it to be in the key of G. Well, again, as I said a while ago, our students literally learn the language before they put it on the guitar or the keyboard or whatever they do. So they actually have an understanding of music before they even begin to play the instrument. Yeah, as an example, I had this happen to me years ago. A 5-year-old, I'm 5 years old, and I can read and I can talk to anybody. Let me replace that. I cannot read. I can carry on a conversation with everybody, but I have no idea how to read. So I've learned the language. Now I'm going to go to school to learn how to read. So what we do in music is we're now learning the language, and once that language begins to get learned, we then apply it to the instrument. Therefore, you have the tools of improv because you are pulling it out of your head and using the instrument as a tool. So we go into Law 2, which actually is the scales by comparison. You know there are 7 letters in musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, F, G. The key of G has 1 sharp. Its comparison key G flat has 6 flats because they have to add up to 7. There are 7 letters in musical alphabet. Key of D has 2 sharps. Therefore, D flat has to have 5 flats because they have to add up to 7. A has 3 sharps. Therefore, A flat has 4 flats because they have to add up to 7, and so on. So the number 7 is really, really important in music. It actually represents perfection. Okay, we also know that there are triads, major, minor, diminished, augmented, which are also learned. Now remember, these students are not reading yet. They're learning this information. So therefore, when they get into the music, they will actually be able to write it, and they'll understand before they read the music what's on the page. Now, there's another book called The Musician's Toolbox, which Jared knows very well. And that's where diatonic begins to talk. We know that diatonic means honor the key signature, and we know that another name for mode is scale. Well, the 1600 to 1750 was the Baroque period. That was prior to Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, which was in the, they're responsible for bringing the major-minor system in. Okay, now, so in the Baroque period, which was the period of improv, they improv'd. But they improv with a lack of knowledge and a lot of ear, but with numbers. And then we come into Bach and Beethoven, and they made and developed what we call the major-minor system, which is still strong today. And this is where these books came from, is the actual understanding. Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and these great composers didn't write it down first. They developed what they understood in their head and heard and actually put it into a language. So what we're doing is we're taking the opposite direction, which I've been criticized before by other people who are teachers, but it has always proven out in the long run we get to develop students like Jared, who are literally composers, teachers at this young age. Unbelievable. The Musician's Toolbox, as an example, I'm going to have Jared name the modes for me. The diatonic modes by name in order are
Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, Ionian.
And we hear people talk in the clinics and things, I won't mention any names, and saying, well, we're going to play the Mixolydian scale, so we're going to flat the 7th. Are you kidding? What are you going to do with it? You're going to play one scale? That's it? So what about the Dorian? What about the Ionian? What's going on here? Okay, Jared, I'm in the key of G major.
G major, right.
What is the Ionian mode?
The Ionian mode, which is also known as the major scale in the key of G, and that will be G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp because of my 1 sharp, and then back to G.
Diatonically. Now, recite the G major scale starting on A and ending on L. A.
Also known as the Dorian mode.
Right.
A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A.
Recite the G major scale starting on 3.
Phrygian mode. B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B.
So what we're saying is the first note of every major scale is Ionian. The second note of every major scale is Dorian. Third is Phrygian. Fourth is Lydian. Fifth is Mixolydian. Sixth is Aeolian. Seventh is Locrian, and back to Ionian. So the modes are nothing more than the major scale by name. A Mixolydian mode has to belong to a major scale. A Dorian mode has to belong to a major scale. They are nothing more. If I'm in the key of G, all the modes honor the key signature of G. If I'm in the key of D, the Ionian mode is D. And D has two sharps, or F and C, so it's D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. All the modes fall right in the same order in every key. Therefore, the language says, when you say Mixolydian and you talk to me about flatting the 7, obviously you don't have a clue what's really going on. Now, we have a diatonic order in triads as well, and that is...
major, minor, minor, major, dominant major, minor, diminished major.
Therefore, if I said to you, what is the 4 chord in the key of G major?
The 4 chord in key of G major, which is one of the primary chords.
Right.
4 chord in G major, you'll take your 1 chord, and I'm going to count out 4 from that, G, A, B, C. And so the 4 chord in G major will be C major.
Right. Again, the key signature takes care of the chord, diatonically. Okay, and then we have 7th chords, which we don't need to go into it right now. And it goes on and on. And this, therefore, we have 6 and 7-year-old students who are writing compositions because they understand the language. And as things continue to move on, it gets deeper and deeper. Now, there is a point where we do begin to insert the reading, but it's after there's a lot of knowledge that they can actually play on the piano or the guitar or whatever instrument they so choose. And when they do this, they have no limitations.
Well, one thing I want to point out from a student's perspective as well is, you know, I've looked at some of the more traditional ways of teaching things like the modes and the formulas for chords as well. And if you look at those modes, that you have to memorize this strange formula of intervals, and no one I've ever spoken to can remember how to spell out a Dorian scale. You know, they take forever to remember, okay, I have a half step, whole step, half step, half step, whole step. I think that's right. Did I miss one? But if you understand diatonic and understand that the modes are diatonic to a major key, there's no guesswork anymore.
Yeah.
And from a student's perspective, it was so easy to learn in comparison to the traditional way of teaching it, which is nearly impossible to keep in your head for your whole life. You memorize it for a week, and then it's gone.
Because I'd like to see you play a Dorian mode right at the moment without having to go through the half step, whole step. This is 100% foolproof. It is literally how music was created from the 18th century right on up. So, and there's much more. We have so much we could talk about. Anyway, Jared, have you got any compositions or anything like that that you would mind playing, or you would like to play, or?
I can try. I can attempt to perform a little bit for you.
Okay.
Normally, I am working in the studio, and it's most of my compositions are right now in the development form on actual paper, because you know you got to think it before you actually put it onto the piano. I am developing one right now. I can maybe give a sample of.
Okay.
And we'll give a try for that.
Okay. What's it developed? What is it?
This is going to be a concerto.
Okay.
Obviously, I don't have an orchestra with me right now, but I'll play some of this concerto.
Okay.
Just kind of what I'm working on right now. The reason I want to choose this one, even though it's maybe not the one that I have best practice right now, is it's a very good example of motivic development right here. I have a theme, and I've learned a lot about, you know, working with those themes, working with your subject, and having it resound throughout your chord progression. And so this piece really represents that, and it's a very emotional piece, kind of meant to represent longing, missing perhaps someone that you love dearly but know you won't be able to see ever again. You know, it's really not so much about the subject, because when listeners hear a piece, they can make it whatever they want. It's about the emotion. For me, music is the sound of emotion. When you hear it, you feel it. So it doesn't need to have a story to it. It's about that feeling for my audience to accept. So I'll try to do something here. We'll see what we can do. Okay. It's quickly before you perform anything, you always need to warm up. Get used to your keyboard. Can I actually get a pillow to sit up on this little?
Yes, you may. Let me grab that.
I'm gonna just quickly run through one octave of the Hanon exercise, which is what we have all of our students warm up with.
There you go.
I'll help a little bit. Okay. This might get in the way too for me. I'm just gonna put that up there right now. Okay. Let's give this a try. This is Concerto Number 1 in C major by myself, Jared Valley. And this is definitely far from being finished, but I'd like to give a sample for it. Well, there's a little bit of guesswork at the end there. I reached the point, but a
Nice.
little bit of improv in
An
there.
original composition out of the head,
Mm.
then to the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with motivic ideas, right?
Mhm.
Can you? What's a motive? What's
A motive is a few germs put together.
and what's a journ?
A germ is the smallest point of the motive.
So therefore, you break the motive into several small components, and then you build from each one of those components, developing sequential repetition, literal repetition, appoggiaturas, choccaturas, all these kind of things.
To give an example for that piece, my first germ is actually my E. I have those four notes right there. I start at my E.
So that's
go to my
germ
C
number
sharp.
one.
That's germ number 1.
Right. Okay.
And then I'll mutate that for number 2 and resolve on a new note. So together, the motive is.
So made of two germs then.
Made of those two germs
Right.
makes out my motive.
And germ is spelled Gern, not germ. Germ.
Not germ, yeah.
Fantastic. Well,
So-
yeah.
And then if you listen to the piece, you can hear that resounding throughout the whole piece. And so, that's something that I'm working on right now. And I have many other ones that I could not play for you at the moment, but are recorded that would also be good examples of that work.
Incredible.
So,
Well, and to say on another note, and we'll closing note, Jared not only plays classical, he plays commercial, and that takes on a whole new gamut. His sister records in the studio, incredibly incredible. And his orchestration and his arranging in the commercial market is superb, as well as in the classical market. So music has no one spot. Music is all built off the same thing, the musical language, and that's basically it. And that's what we teach here. And we've got a complete curriculum from beginning to end, from the beginning student to the professional, and then after that, there is no end to learning. Anyway, that's what's going on. And again, I'm Phil Rogers, and this is Jared Valley, Rogers Foundation of Music and Air Digital Recording. Thank you.